May 2003, the kid left Grove City High School before graduation, joined the Marine Corps, went through combat training, went to Okinawa, served there and in the Philippines, and returned to Camp Pendleton, earned a spot on the wrestling team, volunteered for Iraq, and served a tour there. This is Stefanie Gilliland Mong. But what motivated you in the first place to join the Marines or join the armed forces at all?
I remember in high school when the terror attacks on 9/11 happened, and they let us watch the beginning of it, and then they shut the TV off. They wouldn't let us watch anymore. I knew that I wanted to, make a difference and do my part to help out, so I decided to join some branch of the military. I initially had considered the Army, but after talking to the Marine recruiter, kind of changed my mind a little bit.
So what did the Marine Corps recruiter say?
Basically kind of the same thing, do you want to be the best? And I said, absolutely. Who doesn't want to be the best?
So was boot camp fun?
It was. I actually loved it. One of the very first memories I have of boot camp is the infamous yellow footprints. If you're a Marine, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You get off that bus, you stand on the yellow footprints, and you don't do anything until they tell you to do it. You don't scratch your face, you don't move your arms, you stand there. And then they file you in. You get to make a phone call home. Before you go up in line, they're telling you, you tell them I'm here, I'm alive, I'll call you when I can. That's all you're allowed to say. You can't, if they respond, you can't say anything else. Mm-hmm. A lot of my drill instructors, they were really hard on me, and I couldn't figure out why. I remember specifically the one day you sit online, which is where you're sitting in front of your footlockers, in front of your bunks. And it was towards the end of the night, right before our free time. And my drill instructor was walking up and down the middle of the squad bay, looking at each one of us sitting there and saying, okay, you messed up today, get up on my quarterdeck. The quarterdeck is where you go and get your IT, individual training, they like to call it, extra motivation. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there thinking, this is awesome. I know I didn't mess up today. I didn't do anything wrong today at all. Here comes my drill instructor, looks at me, points at me, and says, I know you did something wrong today. You might as well just take yourself up on my quarterdeck right now. And I thought, dang, this is the only day that I really didn't do anything wrong. But I sucked it up and went anyways, because, who couldn't use a couple extra push-ups and sit-ups?
Yeah. And what choice anyway?
Exactly. I didn't really have a choice at all.
Yeah. So you crawled through the mud and dirt and shot all the weapons and everything?
Absolutely.
Used rifle? What other weapons did you fire?
That was it in boot camp. We did bayonet training. We fired the M16A2 service rifles. And then when we went for MCT, which is Marine Combat Training, that was in North Carolina at Camp Johnson. And I got to fire 240 Golf, saws, we threw grenades, did the grenade launchers. That was more my cup of tea. I like shooting the big guns.
Okay. So you went to the combat training, and then where?
After MCT, they fly you straight to your schooling.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I went to 29 Palms, or as the Marines like to call it, 29 Stumps, because it's literally in the middle of the desert. And I was there for 8 weeks I was getting trained to be a field radio operator. That was my MOS. So that was a little bit difficult as well.
So then, where were you assigned?
From there, I actually got to go home for 30 days of leave. Mm-hmm. And before I went to my first duty station, which was Okinawa, Japan, when you get there, you go to the Joint Reception Center, JRC. Typically, you're only there for about a week. we were there for about a week and a half because they all had off because it was Christmas. So, you know, my Christmas dinner consisted of Popeyes. One of the staff duties for that day brought us, you know, a smorgasbord of mashed potatoes, chicken strips, French fries, and we weren't allowed to leave the base. But we did get to check into our units on New Year's Eve. So that, you know, we checked in with our CO, and he said, you know, I know you guys have been in JRC for about a week and a half, so I'm going to go ahead and authorize you Liberty tonight. And we got to experience, you know, out in town in Okinawa, Japan on New Year's Eve, which was amazing. What I remember of it anyways.
So then you served in Okinawa and the Philippines. How did that come into it?
I was with 7th Com Battalion because I was a radio operator, and they do training exercises with some of the other forces in the Pacific. So they had a training exercise slated for the Philippines. And of course I had just got there. So, I mean, if most people in the military know that, you know, when you first get there and you're the lowest ranking person, you volunteer for everything, because if you don't, you will be voluntold. You don't have a choice. So I volunteered to go, and we actually got to leave early. I was assigned with camp guard duty, which made me an honorary MP. Got my own little MP armband and all of that. We flew from Manila to the island that we went to. It was Puerto Princesa Island. Palawan was the name of it. And really, really tiny island. But since I was an honorary MP, I actually got to work with the Filipino Marines. And the Filipino Marines, any female in the Filipino Marines has desk jobs. They don't carry a weapon, they don't train with weapons, none of that. So here I am, you know, with the Filipino Marines, my M16, I got 3 fully loaded clips, you know, and they're just blown away at the fact that I'm allowed to carry a weapon. Which to me was just like, what do you even mean? Like, that's, of course I have a weapon. Why wouldn't I have a weapon? But we got to do we guarded the front gates, and then we did patrols around the gates, and we did, you know, a lot of the training that we did were mass casualty drills. Once we got back to Okinawa, there actually was the big tsunami in the Philippines. My whole unit got to respond to that. I actually wasn't permitted to go. So I got to stay in the rear. And I really would have loved to go help do that, and I volunteered to go, but they kept me back for apparently administrative purposes. So after I left Okinawa, I got orders to go to Camp Pendleton, California, and I was getting assigned with MWSS 372, which is Marine Wing Support Squadron. So I was technically part of the Air Wing, 3rd Marine Air Wing, and that in itself is a completely different experience. The Air Wing they catch a lot of flack because they're still held to the standards of Marines, but they're, you know, slacked on just a little bit. So they get cut a little bit more of a break, and, you know, if you're a winger, you have it easier than a lot of other units, according to most Marines. Whenever I got to my unit, though, they had left, I want to say, 2 weeks I missed them by, and they had gone to Iraq. So as soon as I get there and check in, they tell me, we know you just had 30 days of leave. We're going to send you back home for 10 more days because you're going to Iraq. I get back to Camp Pendleton after my 10 days, only for them to tell me that I'm not going. The rear party is made up of, generally it's called a broke platoon. It's the people that are injured, pregnant, just had a baby, or about to get out. Those are all the people that don't get deployed because they really can't be used, you know. So here I am, able-bodied, you know, begging them, can we please go for a run? Can we please PT? And they're like, what is wrong with you? Once I started realizing that, you know, I wasn't going to be able to convince them to PT with me all the time in Camp Pendleton, I started going to the gym that was in the area where my barracks was. Unbeknownst to me, this is the recon gym. It's right across from the Scout Sniper School. And it's also where the base wrestling team holds their practices. So I see wrestling practice going on, and I actually wrestled in middle school and the beginning of high school. But I'm thinking, you know, okay, I'm in pretty good shape. Like, I'm going to give this a go. So talk to the coach, start going to wrestling practice. The only female there. He says to me, you know, this is actually leading up to tryouts for the base wrestling team. But this is the men's base wrestling team. And I said, oh, well, is there a females base wrestling team? No, actually there is not. So I said, well, so then can I try out for the men's team? And he said, how much do you weigh? And I was about 130. So easily, you know, I can cut 5 pounds, get down to 125. And he said, we need someone at 125. We have no lightweights. We have a lot of big, beefy guys, but no, you know, lighter weights. So if you want to try out for the team, you know, we're completely open to it. So I said, okay, I'm there. Count me in. So I'm completely excited about it. You know, go into my company Gunny's office. Gunny, I actually got, you know, I got accepted on the base wrestling team. Here are my orders. Are you serious, Marine? You want to go roll around on the ground with a bunch of other Marines when your squadron is in Iraq? No, I don't, Gunnery Sergeant. Thank you for your time. Have a good day. So they wouldn't execute my orders. So I had to go tell them that, you know, thank you for the opportunity. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to be on the wrestling team. 2 days later, we're in a squadron formation, which we do every morning for accountability. It's all the people that are left over. And the company gunny comes out, which he usually is not at formation in the morning. He has better things to do than, you know, roll call. So comes out and says, listen up, Marines. We need volunteers. We need one more person to go to Iraq.
Mm-hmm. You're ready.
Absolutely. So 3 days later, I'm on a plane. So completely, I honestly can tell you that I was not worried about going over there. Had a really calm feeling about it. The only part that I was nervous about was the fact that I knew absolutely no one. Yeah. Because they had all trained together before I got there. They had all worked with each other for, you know, some of them up to a year. And I checked in 2 weeks after they left.
Yeah.
I will never forget checking in with my gunny. Calls me into his office. standing at position of attention. He tells me at ease. So I go to parade rest. And he says, "So, I hear you volunteered to come over here." I said, "Yes, I did, Gunnery Sergeant." "Okay. So, what experience do you have, with the gear and the radios?" And I actually had only really held, administrative positions in my previous platoons, so I had no experience with radios whatsoever. Even though I was trained at comm school for that, I never had any hands-on experience. So, I had to be upfront with him and tell him that, which he obviously was a little bit disappointed. But he couldn't be completely mad because that was, my other unit should have trained me.
Mm-hmm.
So he says to me, "Okay, well, don't worry. We'll get you all caught up." He said, "And you seriously volunteered to come over here?" I said, "Yes, I did, Gunnery Sergeant." I raised my hand in formation. They said they needed one more person to go. So here I am. And he said, "We're going to get along just fine. That's good shit." I said, "Thank you, Gunnery Sergeant." And he did. He took me under his wing. I learned my job in Iraq, which was kind of a scary thing. But what we did over there mainly was we had 2 radio operators that were assigned with the MPs. The MPs went out with EOD, who, diffuses all the bombs, they do all the weapons caches. So our main job there, it was called retrans. And if EOD and the MPs would go out on a call, we would get a call on our little special phone. We'd have to run out, start the Humvee, and we had vehicle-mounted radios in our Humvee. And depending on where they were going outside the wire, we had Mohawk and we had Black Mountain, and those were our 2 sites. We went and we parked right in front of the antennas, and we hooked our vehicle-mounted radios up to the antennas, because what we did was, it's called retrans. We retransmitted the signal from them outside the wire through us back to our AXOC, which is basically the command center of our base. And one of the hardest parts about doing that was you didn't know how long they were going to be out there. We would sit there for 8 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours at a time. Well, comes down the wire that they need as many females as they can possibly get for an upcoming mission. They told us that we were going to do the first ever Iraqi elections. So I was actually more excited than I was scared to go do this, because I actually get to leave TQ and I get to, go experience, different things in Iraq, which probably is, kind of a stupid mentality to have. I'm in a war zone. But I was excited. So we fly from TQ to Al-Assad. Stayed at Al-Assad for a few days. And we got to meet up with the grunt unit that we would be partnering with. So then they tell us, you are going to get 22 Iraqi civilians. There were 7 of us as a group. The 7 of you are getting 22 Iraqi civilians. So from Al-Assad, they flew us they gave us our 22 Iraqis and flew us with the Iraqis to Al-Qaim, which is close to the Syrian border. So here's me, with these grunts who are used to wearing flak jackets, Kevlars, packs, fully loaded down with fully loaded magazines, along with their M16s. I have never experienced this. I'm like, 130 pounds, 5'5", not very big. My gear probably weighed about half of my body weight. And the staff NCO says to me, you're gonna have first shift in the street. Meaning, here's a metal detector wand, you're gonna be wanding, you're the first line of defense. Literally, I remember looking out and it is just a sea of Iraqis. I mean, thousands of them coming to vote, which is awesome that they're coming to vote because this is their first ever election. They've never done anything like this before. At the same time, scary as hell because you don't know if someone has,
Sure.
under all of their clothing that they wear, you don't know if there's an explosive device. That's what I had to find out. That was my job. I had my cargo pockets stuffed with Tootsie Pops because I knew that there were going to be kids. So I would, a lot of them were very hesitant to take the candy from me because they couldn't tell whether I was a male or a female. So I would wand them down, give the kid a Tootsie Pop, if they wanted one, and then send them through. They would walk through the concertina wire. Once they got into the building, you then got patted down. That's where the next station was. And that's where the other 2 females were. And then a riot broke out within the male Iraqis. So this is when we call for our grunts to come up. They're busting through the crowd, trying to get to the source of the problem to get them to stop fighting. And there's me going, let me go. Let me go. I want to go. Can I go help? No. What do you know? You can't go help. Like, what's wrong with you? Stay here. I was like, all right, fine. And so halfway through, they came and got me, and I switched with the other female that was inside. So I went from wanding the females to actually patting them down, which was a completely different and not very pleasant experience. My hands, they didn't give me gloves. My hands were completely black because of how just dirty their clothes were. And at the end of the day, come to find out that our polling site was supposed to get hit really hard by insurgents during the elections. I'm glad they told me afterwards because initially I'm the one out there.
Yeah.
So, thank God for the grunts and what they do because they caught the guys the night before.
Wow.
Hours before the election. When we got back, I found out that my polling site had the biggest turnout. So I actually got an award for that, which was pretty cool because I had never gotten an award before.
Yeah. So, when did you come back then?
We came back in March of 2006. Shortly thereafter, my contract was up in May of 2007. So shortly thereafter, I actually got pregnant with my daughter.
When did you get married?
I got married in, June of 2006. And
that was where?
That was in, we got married in Vista, California. That's my ex-husband. He's actually still in. He's still serving. He's been in for about 12 years now. So, and he's an air winger. So I have to give him crap all the time about that. But I got pregnant with my daughter, and that was actually, that finished out pretty much my last year in the Marine Corps was being pregnant with my daughter. And I actually, when I was in Iraq, I got meritoriously promoted. I had some legal issues, and I had lost my rank twice in Japan. When I got to Iraq, I got meritoriously promoted to PFC. When I got back stateside, I got meritoriously promoted to Lance Corporal.
Mhm.
And 2 weeks before I had my daughter, I got meritoriously promoted to corporal.
Oh.
So that was my least favorite promotion ceremonies, because I was ginormous pregnant and had to march in formation. I mean, they don't cut you any slack. Doesn't matter if you're pregnant. You're marching in formation like everybody else, getting pinned like everybody else. But I took my fat, happy butt, sat right down on the curb right after we got dismissed, because everyone comes and shakes your hands and congratulates you. So if you would have come congratulate me, I'll be sitting on the curb. You can come shake my hand. I won't get up. I can't. My feet are swollen.
Mhm.
So I got promoted in January, had my daughter in January, and then I got out in May of 2007.
So now, it's quite a career. What are your feelings about having done all that? I mean, I honestly feel blessed. As opposed to going to college, Mm-hmm.
I traveled the world.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't trade for the world. I got to, I love sushi now. I experienced sushi in Okinawa. I love Filipino food as well.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the Filipino Marines' wives couldn't believe that they were working with a female. So they would send a whole extra dish of food, homemade Filipino food, for them to give to me to eat, because they just were in such awe at the fact that, you're working with a female, and she has a weapon, and she has rounds, and they couldn't believe it. And, I mean, it was a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
I, got to serve with some of the best people
Yeah.
I've ever met.
Well, I honestly believe that that's a better education than you could ever get in a college.
Oh, absolutely.
By miles. So now you work with veterans.
I do.
Tell me
I
about
do.
that.
I work in the Veterans Affairs Office at the Mercer County Courthouse. I am the administrative assistant, but I am an accredited service officer. So what we do up there is we file people's compensation and pension claims. When a veteran passes away, we make sure that their spouse, gets everything that they're entitled to. And I absolutely love it.
Good.
I didn't even know that office existed until I applied for the job,
Mm-hmm.
but it is by far the most rewarding job that I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, being able to help veterans get what they put in their time to deserve and earn
Mm-hmm.
is just, I can't compare it to anything. It's absolutely great.
Yeah.
And the
I
veterans,
can imagine.
the veterans are awesome. I mean, I've heard so many different stories, I've had the pleasure of meeting World War II veterans, Korean veterans, Vietnam veterans,
Mm-hmm.
who have all had, unique and different experiences that they've shared with me,
Mm-hmm.
which I was never a big history buff. I feel like I'm more of a history buff now
Yeah.
than I ever have been.
Yeah. Well, I think I've learned more talking with veterans than ever any other way.
Oh
Because
yeah,
I've talked with lots and lots too.
I completely agree. And there's so many great organizations out there for veterans
Mm-hmm.
that, my boyfriend right now, he lives in North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
and he is the co-founder of a nonprofit organization down there called Warrior Service Dogs.
Oh.
And what they do is they train service dogs for veterans with disabilities.
Wow,
And
that's pretty interesting.
You would have to see to believe the progress that these veterans make, whether it's mental, you know, they struggle with PTSD, can't go in crowds or groups of people, or, you know, they've lost a limb. These service dogs are their everything. And it's, you know, it's helped so many of them. So there are so many great programs that just, I am, you know, completely honored to be a part of and spread the word about working with the veterans.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I am honored to hear your story, because I think it's splendid. And I want to thank you not only for your service, but also for what you're doing now. Because I totally agree that it's so important, because there's nothing more important than helping and honoring veterans.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for coming in. This was splendid.
Thank you for having me. It's my
You're very
pleasure,
welcome.
as always.
Very welcome.